All right, imagine this, a political party that's so dominant it seems like it can never be beaten. Now imagine that same party getting challenged, completely torn apart from the inside, and then radically reinvented by one single leader. That's not a movie script. That's the real story of India's Congress Party in the wild decade from the mid-60s to the mid-70s. And let me tell you, it is an absolute masterclass in how political power works. So you see this quote from 1967? This wasn't some fringe opinion. This was how a lot of people around the world were feeling. You have to remember, after years of economic trouble, food shortages, and even war, a lot of folks were looking at India and thinking, you know what, this whole democracy thing, it's just not going to work. The whole experiment felt like it was on the verge of total collapse. So where did all this anxiety come from? Well, it really kicks into high gear with the death of India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru back in May of 1964. His death didn't just create a power vacuum, it plunged the whole country into this period of deep uncertainty that people still call the dangerous decade. And suddenly, the whole world was asking two huge questions. The first one was pretty straightforward. After Nehru, who? Who's going to take over? But the second question, the second one was way more serious. After Nehru, what? Would India's democracy even survive? I mean, the fear was real. People worried the country would just go the way of so many other newly independent nations and fall into military rule or just chaos. And boy, were those first few years shaky. At first, things seemed okay. Lal Bahadur Shastri took over smoothly. He was this simple, widely respected leader, famous for the slogan, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. Hail the soldier, hail the farmer. But his time was cut tragically short. He led the country through a war, a food crisis, and then in 1966 he died suddenly. Just like that, India was facing its second leadership crisis in only 2 years. And this is where Indira Gandhi, Nehru's daughter, steps onto the stage. Now, the powerful bosses inside the Congress Party, a group known as the Syndicate, they actually backed her over a much more experienced candidate. And why? Well, their calculation was pretty simple. They thought she was politically inexperienced. They figured she'd be a puppet, someone they could easily control from behind the scenes. Well, let's just say that was a bit of a miscalculation, because within a year, Indira Gandhi had to lead the party into the 1967 general election. And the outcome? It was a shocker, an absolute political earthquake that shook the entire country. The results were just stunning. Now, Congress did manage to hold on to power at the national level, but barely. It was their lowest number of seats ever. To put it in perspective, half of Indira Gandhi's own cabinet ministers lost their elections. People at the time weren't kidding when they called it an earthquake. For the first time, Congress actually looked like it could be beaten. So how did this happen? It was all thanks to this new strategy called non-Congressism. The idea, which came from socialist leader Ram Manohar Lohia, was brilliantly simple. Forget about your own ideology for a second. It didn't matter if you were from the far left or the far right. The only thing that mattered was teaming up to get Congress out of power. This whole chaotic era also gave India a brand new political catchphrase. Party switching, or defection, became so common that it led to the saying, Aya Ram, Gaya Ram. It literally means Ram came, Ram went, and it was coined after one politician switched parties 3 times in just 2 weeks. It perfectly captured the instability of the times. But it turns out Indira Gandhi's biggest fight wasn't going to be against this new opposition. Nope. Her most dangerous challenge was coming from inside her own party, from the very same people who had put her in power in the first place. Meet the Syndicate. This wasn't an official group, but they were an incredibly powerful circle of top Congress leaders. These were the kingmakers. They controlled the entire party machine. From the ground up, they had made Indira Gandhi the prime minister, and they fully expected her to do what they said. But Indira Gandhi was not about to be anyone's pawn. She started to push back, asserting her own authority and relying on her own team of advisors. And here's the brilliant part. She turned this internal power struggle into a battle of ideas. She started pushing these bold left-leaning policies that were designed to build her own base of support among the people, totally bypassing the syndicate. So you've got this Cold War simmering between the prime minister and the party bosses, and then, boom, it all explodes during the 1969 presidential election. This was it. This was the showdown. Okay, what happened next was like a high-stakes political chess match. First, the syndicate nominates their guy for president, totally ignoring her. So Indira hits back, encouraging her own candidate to run as an independent. Then, the masterstroke. She nationalizes 14 major banks and moves to get rid of the privy purse, which was this special payment to former royal families. This made her look like a champion of the poor. When the party officially ordered everyone to vote for the syndicate's candidate, she openly defied them and called for a conscience vote. And the results? Her candidate won. The syndicate was totally defeated and publicly humiliated. Well, as you can imagine, this was the final straw. The Congress president went on the attack, accusing her of political narcissism. And then, in a move that was just unbelievable, he formally expelled the sitting Prime Minister of India from her own party. And that was that. The final break. The Indian National Congress, the party of the freedom struggle, was officially split right down the middle. On one side, you had the Congress organization, the old Congress, led by the syndicate. And on the other, you had the Congress requisitionists, the new Congress, led by Indira Gandhi herself. So what do you do when you're leading a minority government after just being kicked out of your own party? Well, if you're Indira Gandhi, you make another incredibly bold move. You dissolve parliament and call for an election a full year early. It was a massive gamble. And this election quickly boiled down to a battle of slogans. All the opposition parties got together to form a grand alliance, and they had one single negative message: Indira Hatao, which means remove Indira. In contrast, she came up with a powerful, positive vision, all captured in just 2 words: Garibi Hatao, remove poverty. And listen, this was not just talk. She backed up that slogan with a clear platform aimed squarely at the poor and marginalized. We're talking land reforms, limits on urban property, and finally getting rid of those princely privileges. She was building an entirely new base of support among the poor, Dalits, women, and minorities who felt left out by the old system. Now, going into this election, almost everyone thought the real power, the organizational strength, the money, was with the old Congress, with the syndicate. But when the votes were counted, well, the results were more dramatic than anyone could have possibly imagined. Indira Gandhi's new Congress didn't just win. It was a historic, once-in-a-generation landslide. 352 seats. Let that sink in for a moment. That's more seats than the original United Congress had ever won before. And what about the so-called Grand Alliance, led by the powerful syndicate? They were completely and utterly decimated. They won a measly 16 seats. Their Grand Alliance was a grand failure. So, in just 4 years, think about it, Indira Gandhi had faced down every challenge, crushed her rivals inside and outside the party, and brought the Congress back to a position of unmatched dominance. But here's the key thing to understand. This was a totally new kind of Congress, one that was much weaker on the ground and depended almost entirely on the popularity of its one supreme leader. And that leaves us with the big final question, the one that really reshaped Indian politics. Sure, she restored the party's dominant position, but was it really a restoration of the old Congress system, which was known for accommodating all sorts of different factions? Or had she actually created something entirely new, a centralized system where the party really didn't matter as much as the leader? That question would define everything that came next.